Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup. Well, 14 days into the government shutdown with virtually no end in sight. Congressional correspondent Abigail Robertson is standing by on Capitol Hill with lawmakers' response to today's negotiations with the president. But we began tonight at the White House, where President Trump addressed the media after meeting with Republican leaders. Ben Kennedy was in the Rose Garden for that. Ben?
Well, John, President Trump called the meeting productive and that both sides are on the same path to get the government back open. Now, that being said, the $5.6 billion for the border wall must be in the deal, Trump said. He said, look, I'm not playing games and that we need to fix the crisis at the southern border, stop the caravans, coyotes, and illegal drugs, calling it a horrible disaster.
No, we won't be opening until it's solved. We think this is a much bigger problem. The border is a much more dangerous problem. It's a much bigger problem. It's a problem of national security. It's a problem of terrorists. You know, I talk about human traffickers. I talk about drugs. I talk about gangs. But a lot of people don't say we have terrorists coming through the southern border because they find that's probably the easiest place to come through.
Now, Democrats say let's fund the government, and we'll talk about the border later, but Trump said no, it must be in this deal. So how long will the partial shutdown last? Well, the president said it could last months or even a year. And to put things into perspective, some 800,000 federal workers are either furloughed or working without pay. The commander-in-chief added that he doesn't want the shutdown to stretch that long, and this could get fixed, quite frankly, very quickly. A weekend working group with 3 people on the White House staff behind me and several Democratic lawmakers will pick up where today's meeting left off to try and hash out a deal. So, John, we'll have to see if one side budges or if both can come to some sort of an agreement. John?
We'll have to wait and see indeed. Well, Democratic leaders described their White House meeting with the president as somewhat contentious. For more on that, we turn to Abigail Robertson. Abigail, what's your sense of the takeaway after today's sit-down meeting at the White House?
Well, John, I would say the takeaway is sadly it does not appear that they are anywhere near a compromise, or as Ben said, that either side is budging. And unfortunately, it looks like this shutdown is going to continue to be drawn out. Senator Schumer came out of that White House meeting and said that the president said this shutdown could last months and maybe even years. Take a look.
We told the president we needed the government open. He resisted. In fact, he said he'd keep the government closed for a very long period of time, months or even years. The discussion then, we discussed a bunch of issues. As the leader said, they were somewhat contentious. And we'll continue discussing, of course. But it's very hard to see how progress will be made unless they open up the government.
Now, they will continue negotiating throughout the weekend, but it does not seem like there's a plan yet that both sides are willing to agree to reopen the government.
Well, Abigail, when the president and Democrats finally do find a solution to end this partial shutdown, how does that exactly happen? What goes into getting the government back to full working order?
Mm-hmm. Well, John, one of the saddest things about this whole situation that I don't think a lot of people realize is that it costs a ton of money to shut down and reopen the government. I mean, they're arguing right now over $5 billion for border security, but financial experts say a shutdown that's been this long and drawn out, it could cost about 20 to 25 billion in just the impact in the economy and the markets that we're seeing. And so it is very, very expensive, and it could make that $5 billion look like peanuts by when this thing is said and done. And another thing is the workers that either are furloughed right now or being forced to go to work and not receiving paychecks, they will eventually be back paid. But the sad reality there is that there are a group of low-wage federal government contractors, people like janitors or the food service people, who are not included in that back pay. So they're just going 2 weeks now without receiving their paychecks. So today, a group of Democratic senators introduced a bill that would make sure that those low-wage federal income employees would qualify for that back pay as well. But there are a lot of people really struggling because of the shutdown.
That's right, a lot of people affected by this. So what is the mood on Capitol Hill like now? Is there any optimism that a deal might soon be struck?
Well, it's not great. The Senate and the House and Senate are both adjourned now, but I don't think there's a lot of confidence that there's really that there's going to be an end to this. And since this is Faith Nation, I will say to those people watching, we really need to be praying for our lawmakers, and that the Lord gives them a solution where no solution right now seems to exist, because this is really, it's not good for our country, and no one looks good in this situation.
Well, Abigail Robertson reporting on Capitol Hill. Thanks, Abby. Well, CBN's political analyst David Brody joins us now. David, we are entering the third week of a partial government shutdown. Today, the president said he was considering declaring a national emergency to build the border wall. Is that something he can do?
Yeah, he can do it. He can do it, and that's why over the last 2 or 3 months, we've talked a little bit about this, how he's used those words, national emergency, quite often, why he's building up to what he said today, finally, for the first time publicly, which is he can do it. It is true. True, not false. I know a lot of folks want to fact check Donald Trump, but this is accurate. He can go into $10 billion of the Army Corps of Engineers. It's an unused, it's basically $10 billion of unused money. You can only use it if you declare a national emergency. That would be potentially what he can do. And that's his ace in the hole if everything else breaks down.
David, it was interesting. Democrats described their meeting as contentious. He described it as contentious but also constructive. And it looked like there was maybe a turning point here that centers on ports of entry into the United States. Is there a potential compromise somewhere built in that?
Well, there's definitely a compromise. As a matter of fact, I would even say it's not even a compromise. I think Donald Trump would be fine with that. And what we're talking about is roughly 17% or so of cars, of trucks that come into the United States through legal points of entry are only searched. So 17% are only searched. In other words, let me do the math, 73% are really not searched at all, and that's where a lot of legal drugs come in. So more money to beef up ports of entry. Well, Donald Trump, and apparently in that meeting beforehand, a couple of weeks ago, or a week ago, whenever it is, I'm losing track of time.
I am too.
Yeah, said, sure, let's have some more money. So that's a common ground situation, but it doesn't take care of solving the building the wall issue.
Another potential positive sign, the president talked about meetings over the weekend with the Vice President, Jared Kushner, and Democratic leaders, Democratic and Republican leaders.
We've heard this song and dance before. We'll see. But look, it's at the, what's interesting to me, John, it's at the lower levels. Well, I shouldn't say the lower levels. You have Vice President Pence and Kushner, but who are they bringing to the table on the Democrat side? The JV team? I mean, where did Pelosi and Schumer go all of a sudden? So a lot remains to be seen. I doubt if anything's necessarily going to get done. I think this, look, I know Donald Trump said today at the press conference that Mitch McConnell was back doing Senate business. Look, I think Mitch McConnell personally, mark my words now, I think he's checked out.
Yeah.
I think he's like, look, let's get this done. I can get you 60-plus votes in the Senate for that House bill that the Dems passed, and let's open up the government. I think he's checked out, and I think that's where this could be going if they can strike a deal.
We're talking about a new reality in Washington, the president dealing with new dynamics with House Speaker now, Nancy Pelosi. Do you think Democrats, with their new position, will be able to outmaneuver the president, who is the ultimate deal maker? He characterizes himself that, the deal maker in chief?
I really don't. I don't think they're going to be able to outmaneuver this president. Why? Because, look, you have to know your enemy, and I'm not trying to say that they're each other's enemy. Well, actually, maybe I am.
Politically.
No, they are. But look, you have to know your enemy. And the problem with Donald Trump, if you're a Democrat, is you have no idea what he's going to do. So how do you know your enemy if he's so unpredictable? And we know he's unpredictable because what he did a couple of days ago with that, or just about a day, I'm losing track of time again, John, about a day and a half ago when he went to the White House briefing room at the last moment with border security agents, and of course the Rose Garden press conference today. So he's kind of all over the place. You never know what he's going to do, and because of that, he's very hard to predict. Look, he even said today, I might keep the government shut down for a couple of months, maybe even a year or more. So, and you know what? Deep down, Chuck and Nancy, they believe him. He might do it, and that's what keeps them on edge, and that's why you can't outmaneuver this president.
Real quickly, let's just flip that. Does he understand the temperament of this new 116th Congress? Do you think he's going to be able to deal with them both in temperament and also the math to get government back open?
I think the issue isn't so much whether or not he can deal with the temperament of the new Democrats. I think is can Nancy Pelosi deal with the hot temperature inside her caucus? It is hot right now. Everything from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and many of these other freshmen, as we know. So that is going to be something to watch. I think Nancy Pelosi is going to feel pressure to get something done eventually, but not with progressives behind her.
David, always appreciate your insights.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. Well, influential faith leaders are encouraging the Trump administration to continue funding humanitarian foreign assistance programs. In a letter addressed to the President, Vice President, and National Security Advisor John Bolton, the Group of 25 says the aid will save lives, help strengthen communities, and ultimately protect our freedoms at home. Writing jointly, they wrote, "Development and humanitarian programs are cost-effective and ensure America remains a beacon of hope for those in need around the world. We pray that as you lead our generous people, you will find the way to meet our nation's responsibility to those less fortunate." The funding comes from international affairs budget, which makes up about less than 1% of the entire federal budget. Well, as President Trump moves forward with his plans to pull American troops out of Syria, all eyes now turn to Turkey. The NATO ally appears ready to go after Syrian Kurdish fighters, which means an already dangerous situation is about to get worse for Syrian Christians. CBN's Jennifer Wishon explains.
For President Donald Trump, getting U.S. troops out of Syria fits neatly into his America First foreign policy.
But I don't want to be in Syria forever. It's sand, and it's death.
But as the U.S. prepares to draw down, Syrian Christians fear they'll be wiped out as Turkey eyes a new opening to go after its foe, the Kurds. In an open letter to the world, Syriac Assyrian Christians write, 100,000 Syriac and other Christians will be killed or driven away if Turkey invades. Turkish jihadists hunted down the Christians and Yazidis of Afrin in northwest Syria. They will do the same again, but at a much wider scale. They're referring to the ongoing cross-border operation into the Kurdish city of Afrin, launched by Turkey in March. And it's not just the Turkish military. Christians fear Turkey's Islamist agents, who have no respect for religions outside of Islam. Aykan Erdemir is a former member of Turkey's parliament and current senior fellow at the Defense for Democracies.
Will we see jihadists coming back, enslaving religious minorities, killing them, destroying churches? And it's not just about, not just fears of a genocide too, but beyond that, I know it's catastrophic for the communities at large, but we're also talking about the extinction of an ancient way of life. We're talking about, Christianity in its cradle, Yazidism in its homeland, being completely destroyed.
It's interesting because just last month, H.R. 390 became law, which says the State Department shall identify threats of persecution, genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes against members of Iraq or Syrian minority religious or ethnic groups. Does that, what's going on with the U.S. and the threat that you've just laid out, does that contradict this?
I think we're sending mixed signals, certainly.
Turkey has a growing notorious reputation when it comes to religious freedom. In its latest report, the U.S. designated Turkey a Tier 2 country of concern when it comes to allowing Christians and other religious minorities to practice their faiths freely. Still, President Trump is standing firm on his decision to bring U.S. troops home. What's the solution here? What can be done?
In the Middle East, there's no such thing as vacuum. The moment you create a vacuum, you can be sure that Iran will be there, their proxies will be there. You can be sure that there will be Sunni jihadists there and their patrons as well, and also Russia.
One option would be for the U.S. to recognize Kurdistan as a nation. But like everything in the Middle East, Erdemir says that's complicated because large populations of Kurds are spread across a number of countries, including Iran. For now, it appears U.S. policy is putting 2,000 years of Christian history and tradition at risk. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News.
Thank you, Jennifer. Well, earlier this week, President Trump extended his original timetable to pull U.S. troops out of Syria from 30 days to just 4 months. Still, as Chris Mitchell reports, some fear the withdrawal may do more than upset the balance of power in the Middle East.
U.S. boots may remain on the ground a bit longer in Syria, but President Trump's surprise announcement pushed other countries to act. Turkey bolstered its border with military equipment, while Syria positioned troops and weapons outside the Kurdish-held city of Manbij. Both countries feel threatened by the Kurds. Although the group voted for an independent state in 2017, most countries have refused to recognize it. CBN News has learned the Kurdish group allied with the U.S. is under pressure from Russia to strike a deal within days. This Kurdish official fears what might happen after a pullout.
The geopolitical rivalry between Iran and Turkey, with the help of Russia, obviously, probably it's either going to put or will empower the Assad regime, or it's going to be Iran who is going to really benefit. That's also put a lot of security risk for the Israel as well.
That potential led to a New Year's Day meeting between Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. The pullout raises a number of dangerous scenarios. Turkey may follow through on threats to attack the Kurds. Russia may try to take the rich oil fields in northeastern Syria. And the Iranians still want a straight-line route through Syria to the Mediterranean.
From the Israeli perspective, the major concern is Iran. Iran is likely to misread President Trump and misread America and think that America is leaving because it was defeated. And now they can go in and take over Syria.
Former Israeli ambassador to the UN, Dori Gold, says nations like Iran believe their historic empires allow them to conquer faraway lands. In this case, Iran claims Syria as its 35th province.
And therefore, the strength of America, even in a little corner of Syria, is pivotal to prevent a deterioration in the Middle East.
Earlier, Senator Lindsey Graham met with President Trump and said the president understood the number of complicated issues surrounding the pullout.
You got the Kurds that we need to be concerned about. They stepped up when nobody else would, and he's very aware of that problem.
In addition to the Kurds, retired General Jerry Boykin tells CBN News the U.S. pullout threatens thousands of Christians in the region.
They've all congregated there, so there could be a Christian and a Kurdish genocide up in that area if we don't leave measures in place to help protect them.
It's becoming clear that crucial decisions over the next few weeks will likely affect the fate of these Christians and even the future of the Middle East. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
And for more news and information from Israel, make sure to check out the CBN News Channel's Jerusalem Dateline, which airs every Friday night at 9:30 Eastern on the CBN News Channel. For more information on how you can tune in, go to cbnnewschannel.com. Well, coming up, we highlight an effort to help give jobs to a group that often goes underemployed. That story when we come back. Welcome back. Investors are increasingly uncertain about the economic outlook as stocks over the last several weeks continue to make wild swings. Today, some good news as stocks made a gain. The Dow ended the day up 746 points. Well, those Wall Street gains come on the heels of the latest U.S. jobs report. Despite fears of a growing trade war and a 2-week government shutdown with no end in sight, jobs are signaling the economy is going strong. The employment numbers out today show employers added 312,000 jobs in December, with the construction and manufacturing, healthcare, and food service industries adding most of those jobs, and the average hourly pay ticked up more than 3% from where it was last year. Well, while unemployment is down to its lowest number in 50 years, one demographic still struggles to find work: those with special needs. Caitlin Burke introduces us to one business owner in Dallas, Texas, who's out to change that.
It's hard not to smile when you walk into the Howdy Homemade Ice Cream Shop in Dallas, Texas.
Howdy.
You may notice something unique in the place, but then the samples start coming and you just get caught up in the experience.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How about you?
Good, thank you very much.
In North Texas alone, there are over 240,000 special needs adults looking for work. Howdy Homemade Ice Cream Shop is looking to tackle that statistic as the first for-profit business to only hire special needs workers.
There isn't anything that's warm and fuzzy about this. This is saying that we're a for-profit business. Our employees and the people that our employees represent are a huge opportunity for the restaurant industry and other industries to really start to hire.
Restaurant vet Tom Landis sees special needs employees as a solution to some of the industry's biggest problems.
Employee turnover and poor customer service, and those are both solved, I think, by people with special needs, that they're friendly continuously over and over again when the average employee just isn't. And at Howdy, we have a 0 turnover rate. You know, our guys love it, and they want to stay around.
When Landis first felt this inspiration, he wanted to give these workers the best shot at success. Coleman was Landis's first employee.
One of the big football teams has its annual dinner at one of my other restaurants, and we're busy, and Coleman was there as, I think, team manager, but he just kind of started passing out food and helping, and you know, we just kind of noticed him of here's a kid that you know, he didn't need to serve others, he was there, but not only that, he was so, I mean, he's, you know, I felt like by the end of the night he had more friends in that restaurant than I did, and that, you know, he's exactly what the restaurant industry needs.
I like to help make the ice cream sometimes, but personally I also like to be friendly and say hi to the customers, or even say howdy to the customers.
Landis wants others to not only appreciate his business model, but to replicate it. And it's not just the restaurant industry he hopes to change.
It takes some additional upfront patience, love, but I think, I mean, God made those with Down syndrome to truly be the very best in the hospitality sense of the word. And then also those on the autism spectrum, there's just an incredible opportunity for those minds to be harnessed, I think, in the restaurant industry, but also beyond.
As word spreads, interest grows. Landis says at least 50 people want to franchise Howdy Homemade, with new offers coming in each day. Each and every employee not only exceeds their boss's expectations, but those of their parents, teachers, and even their own. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Dallas, Texas.
When we come back, the story of one of the first people to reap the benefits of the newly signed criminal justice reform legislation.
Young people, millennials, are flocking to church.
It's not an exaggeration to say that we love to meet them and that we love to know their stories.
Well, the new criminal justice reform law is beginning to change the lives of some people serving time in prison. Matthew Charles is one of the first people to be released since the First Step Act was signed into law just a few weeks ago. Charles was sentenced to 35 years in prison over drug and gun charges back in the 1990s. During his trial, a fellow inmate gave him a Bible. That started a new chapter in his life. During the next 2 decades behind bars, Charles completed more than 30 Bible correspondence courses. He got a college degree and even became a law clerk. He ended up being released in 2016, but a technicality put him back into the system. CBN News spoke with his girlfriend during the time he was back in prison.
Matthew is a kind, considerate person, very good heart. Not once have I seen animosity or anger throughout this whole situation. He has a very strong spirit. God is with him, no doubt.
Well, as of today, Charles is once again a free man, making him one of the first people to benefit from the First Step Act, and we wish him well. Well, that's going to do it for tonight's Faith Nation. We thank you for watching. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday.